Hello, fellow commanders. This is Captain Too Tall with Too Tall War Games. Welcome back, everybody. In my last video, I went to the Michigan Grand Tournament and did pretty well for myself. And so I thought that I'd be making a tier list for the Custodes, and I will probably also be making a tier list for Astra Militarum that will be coming out shortly also. And then I have plans to make a video covering list building. I had a few people request that, but that will take a little bit longer to do. And currently I've got some stuff going on. So, without further ado, I thought we would dive into a tier ranking by yours truly of Adeptus Custodes. Now, take this in mind. I am not a professional player. I do compete at tournaments and do well, at least in my opinion. However, these could probably be taken with a grain of salt. I have grown attached to some units, and so I will probably be ranking some things higher than you guys would like, but it is what it is. So first off, we have the one, the only, Big Daddy Taliman. Now, the Taliman, for anybody who's not super familiar with Custodes, is pretty much an auto-include in every army that you make. The reason being, it's probably point for point the toughest model that we have. It's toughness 8, 14 wounds, 2 up save, 4 up invul save, -1 damage, and has a 6 up feel no pain. So just base stats alone without any stratagem support, it's a pretty beefy boy. And a lot of people, including myself, are taking a gun arm and a melee arm. So if you throw Eternal Penitent onto that, you're getting several pretty powerful melee attacks as well as a plasma flamer, which I think is pretty cool. And then a gun also on the other arm, and you have kind of this old school heavy bolter sitting on top of him. So he has a decent amount of shots, some pretty quality shots, and he's durable, and he's punchy. Next up is going to be the Land Raider for Custodes. I don't know if I want to put this in D or E. I almost think that it's not E, because I feel like there are armies that are just have things that are worse than this. I think for Custodes specifically, this is going to fall into the lowest category. And that's because the Land Raider doesn't do anything for the army. It is T8, and it has 16 wounds and a 2 up save. Or I think it's actually still a 3 up save. But it doesn't have any different profile than a normal Land Raider for Marines. The only thing special about it is that it can carry Custodes models. But because Custodes models already are so expensive, I don't think I've ever seen anybody run one of these competitively. If the thing had like an invul save and maybe some gun options, I could maybe see it working, or like a -1 damage or something. And honestly, that might be something that we get with our codex. I don't know yet. I know our codex is coming up soon, but for right now, it's probably the worst thing that we have an option for. I'm going to put, so I think these are the Flamer Sisters. Flamer Sisters are going to go in here. Melee Sisters, going to go here. And then Bolter Sisters are gonna go here also. So Flamer Sisters, they're indeed. I mean, they're better than a Land Raider, which is weird to say, but you're paying a premium not only for their special rules, but you're paying a premium for Flamers, and so it ends up being way too expensive of a model. I think they're 90 points for a 5-girl squad. So that's pretty rough. I mean, they're all toughness 3, and they have power armor, so they're 3-up save. But a 3-up save isn't what it used to be, especially at toughness 3. There's a lot of strength 6 plus in the game, so they died to a stiff breeze. They are still cheap for what Custodes have, but they are not obsec, so definitely D for the Flamer girls. I put the other 2 options in C tier. I would put the Bolter ones higher. Actually, I could put either one of these higher. But honestly, I just don't value what they give Custodes. You know, right now, a lot of people talk about Sisters being good in the meta because you have Thousand Suns and Grey Knights, which is fair. They, for each squad of Sisters you have, they give a -1 aura for casting psychic powers. I think it's within 18 inches. And then they also have some stratagems that are kind of cool, including one that you roll a single dice, and on a 3-up, it denies a psychic power. Custodes already have basically the same thing on a 4-up, except if you take Wardens, it's a 3-up. But the fact remains, they got some cool stuff against psychic, but honestly, I think they're a liability, especially in this meta, where you have AdMech flyers, and you have Orc buggies, and Orc flyers, and even into Grey Knights. Grey Knights can just shoot these girls off of an objective. Like, you could have a squad of Interceptors just run up to one of these squads and shoot them. It's like, yeah, it might kind of interfere with their psychic power a little bit, but those 2 armies in particular are going to be casting so much psychic anyway that either the psychic that they really need to get off, they can just force it to go off, or they're probably pass anyway because you have like +1s and +2s to cast and all this other stuff, or they'll just put stuff out of range of the Sisters because you don't want the Sisters out in the open or in the middle of the field because they're going to die. I think if you want to include a model or include a unit in your army for the anti-psyker role, I would just choose a Calydus assassin. It's more durable, it's easier to hide, and it is a character. It has a really nice fight last stratagem, and yeah, I think it's better. I mean, I'd rather take a Calydus assassin over 2 squads, or over 2 squads of any of these, or 1 squad of any of these for sure. So, moving on, Aloris Terminators. You know, I don't have a bad feeling about Aloris Terminators. I'll stick with my gut. I'll put them in B. So, Terminators in general, and actually I'm going to put the other Terminators here as well. Terminators in general, I really wanted to make a list around Terminators over the last few months, but I kind of ran into an issue where Terminators have some mobility, like when they're deep striking, because they can deep strike anywhere on the map, but they still move 6 inches, and if they fail their charge, I know that you have stratagems and stuff that can kind of help, but if you're looking at the unit without building your army around it, the unit just doesn't, to me, do a whole lot. They're still Custodes, so they're still going to be tough. They're still a toughness 5. They still got their 2-up save and 4-up invulnerable save. And you have access to the stratagem for ignoring AP1 and AP2, which helps with their survivability a lot. And I think that they are still good and they're beefy boys. But there's a couple things here that kind of, on both variants, make me kind of question how good they are. For the Aloris, their axes or spears, whichever one you take, are still only AP 1 in shooting and at best 2 shots and strength 4. And then in melee, their axes are only AP 2, and yes, you can buff it with the stratagem, but I don't want to be spending my command points for an extra AP. I feel like the AP should just be there. Also, you have a real issue with D3 damage here. And then on the flip side of that, you have the Forge World Terminators, who have bigger bases, which can be awkward by itself. Also, yeah, they're damage to Power Fists in combat, but I'd almost rather just take the Lightning Claws on these boys, because the Power Fist, while it's 2 damage, a lot of the stuff you want to punch with them is -1 damage. So if I'm just going to be doing 1 damage to like a Mortarion or a Magnus or a Dreadnought or any of that stuff, I would rather just be taking the Lightning Claws and get the reroll to wound. I do like the gun options on the Forge World Terminators. I like that you can take Adrathic Destructors on them. I think that personally would be the way I would run them, is to take twin Adrathic and then Lightning Claws, because that way you have decent shooting when they drop in, especially into tougher targets with the flat 3 damage. And then you're going to have Lightning Claws for reroll the wound rolls, so that could be pretty good. But I'm not sold on either one of these units. I play tested them once, and it is what it is. This is the Terminator Captain. I feel like the Terminator Captain I'm gonna put him in A tier. It's kind of a spicy take. Terminator Captain for me is in an interesting spot, because I think that the Terminator Captain is one of those. Sorry if you guys hear dogs in the background. But the Terminator Captain is one of those that I think could be really good. He's got 7 wounds like the Bike Captain does. His issue really is mobility. You can give him the axe or the spear. What I like is that he's also got the little grenade launcher gun, and you can use the Terminator strats with him. So like you could ignore Overwatch, which sometimes comes up. And since he's infantry, you can use him for Tanglefoot. So I don't think he's bad. I think he's better than normal Terminators, so I'm going to put him in A for now. I don't feel great putting him in A, but he's like in between B and A for me. Vexillas. I'm going to put both Vexillas in B tier. Some people I notice like to say that Vexillas are like auto includes. I don't know why, because we're already a really elite army, and you I'm trying to think of a good way to explain it. Yes, the -1 to hit is really nice, and I have played several games where it's been really nice, but I also could have used those points on models that did things other than just stand there and be -1 to hit banners. I think both of these have play. I don't know. I think that the Terminator one has less play, because the other one you can equip it with a weapon or a shield, which means you have access currently to a 3 pinball save, or you can beat somebody over the head with a Guardian Axe or something. The Terminator one I like because it's versatile, and it does have a gun, but you have to equip a dagger for it to have any melee profile at all, which I think is a bit dumb. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think these are just B tier options. I could see in some matchups where they're really good, but in general, I'm just not sold on them. Captain Trajan Valoris. He's a pretty solid S tier. I mean, technically, I could see someone making a case for him to be A tier, but to me, this guy is definitely S tier. You're usually saving 2 to 3 command points when you bring him, because you're either spending his moment shackle on like a 2 or 3 command point stratagem, and also he's okay in melee, but really he comes with his own 3-up and will save, which is nice. And you also have to remember that he gives rerolls to hit in hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. So I feel like I have to take him every game, pretty much. There have been like lists that I make where I'm like, oh, I don't have to take Trajan, and then I regret not taking him. Like, it just always feels good to take him. Here's probably a spicy take. I think Wardens are B tier. So Wardens are in a weird place right now. I feel like I'd rather take a unit of Wardens over 2 units of Sisters. The reason being, while they're just more expensive Custodian Guard, they have a flat 6-up Feel No Pain instead of the 6-up Feel No Pain to mortals in the Psychic phase. And so just having a flat Feel No Pain, I think, is pretty useful, even though it's a 6-up. Also, these things are only, I think, 3 points or 4 points more expensive than a normal Custodian Guard when you factor in the fact that these guys have to come with a Misericordia. So I don't know. I think these guys are okay. They get the special stratagem or bonus to the stratagem for the Custodes to ignore Psychic Power, because normally you ignore Psychic Power on a 4-up, and these guys bring it down to a 3-up. For that reason, into those specific matchups I mentioned earlier with like Thousand Suns and Grey Knights, and I guess now Tyranids a bit too, those might pop up some more. I think that Wardens are actually a decent choice. I wouldn't necessarily run them in all my lists or anything, but I think they're B tier. I think that people would be pleasantly surprised with running Wardens. Normal Shield Captain, I mean A tier. I mean, a lot of this has to do with his cost, right? Because it's 100 points for just like the base Shield Captain, and then you can always talk about the Shield Captain with a shield that has a 3-up and will save, and then really this guy you can make super ridiculously tanky depending on what you do to him. But I think that he's a relatively versatile character, and he's kind of cheap for what Custodes bring. Bikes. So I really want to put Bikes in S tier, and I'm going to move him back down to A tier, but I think, you know what? No, spicy take right here, buddy. Bikes S tier. I wouldn't leave home without a squad of Bikes in this meta. Now, this could change, especially since we're going to be getting to Codex in like a month and a half, but with Admech and Orcs and all of those guys running around, I think Bikes are an S tier pick right now. They are kind of squishy for their points. They're very expensive. It's 85 points per model. But if you have a unit of 5 Bikes and you can hide them with any efficiency on your first turn, you're going to have a good game with them. They will kill something and shooting with the salvo launchers, and you'll probably get a decent turn 2 charge off. And you'll be able to do a lot of work with these guys. I think if you are a beginner player, or if you are playing in like a really funky meta that doesn't have Admech or Orcs or even like Drukhari really, because those are the 3 like plain factions right now, then I'd put them down like A tier, but they're S tier right now with all the flyers running around, I think, personally. Bike Captain, like auto include. I think the Bike Captain's been an auto include since really. Here we go. Let's change this up. I think the Bike Captain has been an auto include since it was introduced. It's gotten more expensive, but it does a lot of things. You can either make it ridiculously tanky, you can make it ridiculously killy. There's just a lot of versatility with it, and it's just a good model. Okay, so I'm gonna rank the Dreadnoughts next. We're gonna just do this. Okay. So, Spear Dread. A tier. The Spear Dread has a lot of damage. It's not an auto include, but it's good. The Spear Dread is good, especially if you're taking a Drathic on it. You're getting 6 shots, including the spear, at flat 3 damage, which is really cool. And in melee, it is damage D3 plus 3, and with Eternal Penitent, it's got 6 attacks, hitting on 2s. It's pretty good. All of the, like, both that Dreadnought and this Dreadnought, the Calydus, have 9 wounds to start, so they don't bracket, which I think is amazing. I think the Calydus Dreadnought is... No, it's A tier. They're both A tier. But I would rank the Calydus Dreadnought higher, I think, than the Spear Dread. The Sword and Shield Dreadnought is just a little bit tankier. It's got flat 3 damage attacks with its melee weapon. And again, both of these are just really good for us. Unfortunately, their hillbilly cousin is not as good. The normal Games Workshop Dreadnought has been kind of left in the dust compared to these two guys. The normal Dreadnought is really suffering from a few things. First of all, for some reason, it never got the -1 damage buff that every Dreadnought in the game got. So that's already one strike. The second strike for me is that it's 10 wounds where these are 9 wounds. And at 10 wounds, you start to bracket. So at, I believe, 5 wounds it brackets, and again at 3 wounds it brackets. Whereas these two Dreadnoughts never bracket. That's another thing. And then the Fist is okay in melee, but the gun options aren't the best. You either have one multi-melta or an assault cannon. And both of these guys shoot better than that. I mean, you have a 2d6 super heavy flamer at strength 6 on the Sword and Shield Dread. And then, like I said, you have 6 shots at strength 5 and 3 flat damage on the other Dread. So, like, everything just is, like, this guy just gets outclassed by everything. Venatari A. I don't actually think they're auto-includes. People are probably going to flame me for saying that they aren't auto-includes. I think that they're as good as the Dreadnoughts are, and that makes them really good. I would run them in almost every list, but my last 2 lists I've been running, I haven't run them. I think Venatari are good in a Marine meta, but we've been kind of shifting out of a Marine meta. You could say that because you'll run into probably 2 Marine lists at a tournament, at a 5-round tournament, that it's a Marine meta still. But that's mainly just because you're always going to run into at least 1 or 2 Marine lists because Marines are just popular. And if you're wanting to tech into those Marine lists, then sure, bring Venatari. But Venatari, like, I don't want to tech into something that's super common. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like all of my lists can already deal with Marines. So I don't want to bring these guys necessarily. They also, I think, to me, struggle into some other matchups, particularly AdMech. I just don't think they do a lot in that matchup. I could be wrong, but yeah. Like I said, I still think that they are a great unit, and I will be testing them out shortly on a tournament list. But again, A rank, they're as good as these dreadnoughts, better than the rest of A rank, but I don't think they're as good as what I have in S rank, at least for this meta. Normal Custodian Guard. This is like really mixed. I think I'd say B. And I'll shove them kind of in the front of B tier, I think. Maybe. There we go. So Custodian Guard, there's a lot of flexibility in there. Storm Shields are going to be good. The only issue I have with Storm Shield Custodian Guard is that they just sit there, and we don't have a lot of points, or we don't have a lot of room in our lists for units that just sit there. So to me, that's kind of, I don't want to say a trap. I just feel like you could be doing something with those points. I'm an aggressive player. I'm not a super defensive player. So for me, that's kind of a waste to have 150 points just sitting somewhere and not contributing to anything and just existing. I understand that sometimes you're going to have games where you need that, but the game is super killy, and there is not a ton of indirect fire outside of like orc buggies or Astra Militarum, and nobody plays Astra Militarum right now. So I think if you have something else sitting on objective other than like Sisters, of course, because Sisters get eaten alive by orcs, but if you just have some Sagittarium Guard or whatever sitting on objective, it'll be pretty much the same as having these shield boys sitting there. But I would say they're like B plus, especially with the shields. If you take them with the spears, they're not as good. I'm gonna put the flyers, both flyers, in D. And honestly, these have potential to be like A tier, but their points costs really hinder them, and they currently don't have, like, if they had like a -1 damage or something, or even an option for -1 damage, like AdMech flyers, I think that would bump them up to like B tier automatically, and maybe even A tier. But these things are like 500 points. They have decent quality shooting, but they also only have a 5-up invul save, and so it's tough for me to do anything other than D tier. I think when we get our new codex, hopefully maybe they might mention some of the Forge World models, and they might give another look to these flyers. Hopefully, give us like -1 damage on these things, or give us some way to make them more durable. But kind of as it stands, you have this massive model, and if your opponent is decent and brings a good list, they're going to blow it up. And it's not going to be fun for you. I think Sagittarium Guard are also A tier. I think they're better than normal Guard. And the Heavy Bolter, like, even if you just sit these guys on objective compared to sitting these guys on objective, the Sag Guard can at least still shoot at stuff. and having 2 profiles on their gun that they can shoot, including one of which is flat 3 damage. It's pretty spicy. I think them and Venatari are like almost interchangeable in usefulness. Both are OBSEC, and when you give the Sag Guard the knives, because they don't have a melee option other than knives, they are about equally costed. And I'm going to be testing some stuff where I'll use Venatari in place of Sag Guard, and then, you know, vice versa, and see kind of how that feels. Both are relatively mobile because the Sag Guard have assault weapons, so they can advance and shoot. And these Venatari move 12 inches, so I think the Sag Guard are definitely A tier. I don't think they're better than Dreadnoughts because they're a little squishier than that, but I would compare them probably to the Venatari. This thing, it's Forge World's attempt to give us a transport that isn't a Land Raider, and it's not good, I don't think. First of all, it sounds like Corona, which is a virus, but other than that, I have like nothing to say about it. It's a 18 wound thing, and it doesn't do anything except transport guys and have a few shots to it, and for Custodes army that just doesn't work for me. This thing would have to be like, the price of this thing would have to be cut in half, which would honestly probably make it busted, but I wouldn't even consider it unless it was like 120 points. So our battle grav tank, the Calydus, I don't know where exactly to put this yet, because I just got my tanks the other day. I'm going to put it at the end of A tier. So I have kind of mixed feelings. I think in the current meta, things are a little too shooty and too killy, where I think it might die pretty easily. But I also have to respect the fact that it has a good damage, and they did lower the cost. I think it went from 225 to 205. So you could take almost 3. You could take 3 of these for the cost of 2 Taliman. Is it worth it? I don't know. Probably not. If you wouldn't be wrong in taking this model, I think. But again, I'd have to play test it. I'll leave it at the end of A tier. Palace Grav tanks, S tier. You should run them. I know I know that that's also going to get a lot of hate from me. But I don't know why people aren't running these things. They're 95 points, guys. They are a sub 100 point model in the Custodes arsenal. They are toughness 6 with 8 wounds, which means they do not bracket. Their save is worse than normal Custodes, but it's still a 3-up save and a 5-up invul save, which is better than 90% of the other vehicles and monsters out there. They also have access to flat 3 damage with one of their profiles. The profile that isn't flat 3 damage is 6-shot heavy bolter. I mean, I don't know what else to say about them. These things move 16 inches. They get me turn 1 stranglehold every game. I have had very few games where somebody kills all 3 of my Palace Grav tanks. And a big portion of that reason is because I'll have other things that are much scarier than those 3 Palace tanks. However, the 3 Palace tanks are the things that are scoring me points. And they do so pretty reliably. So again, I feel like this is a sleeper unit and nobody's running it. I probably should put this in A tier, but I'm putting it in S tier because, like I said, this is definitely one of my favorite units, and it does a lot of work for me. We're not going to talk about these things. They're just trash bikes. For some reason, GW got bikes right when Forge World can't seem to. The Forge World bikes are just not good. They're too expensive for what they do. If these things were the same cost as normal bikes, I'd put them in A tier, probably, maybe even in S tier, because the guns that you can get off of these are actually pretty nice. But I'm not paying a big premium on these bikes for their guns. I'm not doing it. I'm not paying 100 plus points for a model that has 4 wounds. Even at a 4 bin will save, I'm not doing that. And then this, I'm just putting it dead last. Actually, you know what? No, bikes. These things are worse than that. I don't understand what their motivation was here with this 2 character set. I really wish you could have just taken these 2 characters as separate units, and maybe that's something they're going to be doing soon. But as it stands, I'm not paying 200 points for this particular matchup when I could get a 100 point captain and then a 100 point Calydus assassin, which actually I think is better than the sister's character. Same point cost overall, 200 points, with arguably better characters. So, well, I think that's going to wrap up this tier ranking system I did for Custodes. I am sure that this is all going to change massively here in the next couple months as our codex releases, but I will be going to a grand tournament here in a couple weeks, and as it stands, this is pretty much where I rank everything. But go ahead and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, even if it is just telling me that I am super wrong on everything. But as always, have a great day, guys.